I've had it up to here with cleaning the mud off this Audi R8.
And that's because when I got it, it looked like this. After the YouTuber which I bought it off did this with it.
We've spent so much time and done so many processes to get all the mud out of this car after Mark McCann rallied it round his field and was going to turn it into his dream off-road supercar, but then had a change of plans. So I'm now trying to save this former supercar and bring it back to a nice, clean, original factory spec. But as you can see, there is so much to do.
And that's exactly the reason why I'm not going to waste any time in this video, and we're going to get straight on with it. So the first thing to go back on is this lower spoiler frame, and then we can start attaching the rear spoiler again, which is looking so much better after I restored it in the last video. So once we've got this plugged in and got all of the bolts in which go right around the edge, we can then put on the bracket which holds on the rear bumper too. Now that all of that's in place, the rear spoiler blade can go on, which is just held on with 4 10mm nuts. Now for some reason these door shuts are in satin black, but luckily it's in plastic dip, which means I can peel it off and the paint's undamaged.
Now to fit up this kind of one section of the rear quarter, I've had to run and get some new clips from TPS because, well, these are the old ones and a lot of them broke when they came out. Now they are actually a different style, but I don't know if this is just a revised version of this, but these seem to fit quite a lot better anyway.
So we can now start refitting some panels, starting with this lower quarter trim. So that just pops into place, and then there's about 10 T30 bolts holding it on too. One thing that has surprised me with this R8 is how kind of hand-built it is. There's shims and spacers everywhere, like you'd expect on a Italian supercar. So it's not as so Audi as you think, if that makes sense. But that's not necessarily such a bad thing. It just shows how different they are to a TT or any other Audi model. But anyway, now we're reassembling the air intake system, and obviously cleaned out the airbox which was full of mud previously. And this is going to be a first for this car because so far it's mainly been cleaning and restoring, but now we have a new part to go on it.
Okay, now it is time for the air filters and maps to go back in, but there is no way that I can put these muddy, horrible Pipercross filters back in. But luckily the guys at Pipercross have actually sent us out some replacements, which I really appreciate, so thank you very much to those guys. And we can get these on the car with some nice, fresh filters on there, which aren't coated in mud. That's a bit of a difference if you ask me.
So we can fit the new Pipercross air filters to the old MAF sensors once they'd had a clean up, and then bolt this down inside the airbox, which for some reason feels like a huge step in the right direction. But now that they're in place, we can now screw down the top of the airbox and keep those enclosed and sealed and nice and clean. But the intake system on the R8 is massive, and it doesn't stop just there. It goes all the way around to those silver fins that you see on the side of the car. So we need to fit all of the tubing and pipework which goes to there, and then we can fit the rear quarter over the top, which is pretty easy to do. There was just loads of T30 bolts holding it in place in all sorts of funny locations, but once those are in, they're rock solid and it lines up absolutely perfectly. But now that that's on, we can then fit the last part on this side, which is the silver side fin and the fuel filler cap. So once that's plugged in with the drain hose on there as well, that then slides in on pins with a bolt at the top and a bolt at the bottom. Now my aim with this car is to get it in such good condition you can't tell what's been done with it, but when you're buying a car and you want to know the full history of that car's past, there's only one way to do it, and that's checking it out on Car Vertical. So while we're fitting up the rear lights, let's check the report on this car. But as you can see, it's green ticks across the board because this car has actually never been crashed. You can see it's got a green tick for mileage, theft, finance and accident status, which is a bit of a new one for me.
Well, progress is looking good. We've got the rear end basically nearly fully reassembled. I'm not going to put these vents back in yet because it's all going to come back off very, very soon. But on the whole, I'd say we're about there on the back end. Now we've got to turn our attention to the front because that is still fully stripped down. So we need to get the bumper on. We need to sort the trims out back here. We have also got a anti-roll bar which has been cut lovely there, so we need to replace that. We need to get some drop links in. There's quite a lot to do on the front end, to be honest. It doesn't look like a lot, but there's a lot more than you think. Right, here is the new one. It looks good, doesn't it? It looks better condition than the old one. This is actually off a V10, but they're the same part number, so it doesn't make a difference. But we're gonna try and feed it in. I'm not feeling hopeful. How about you?
It's not going to work, is it? Look.
I don't think so, but we've got to try it.
But not every car is the same, because check out this Audi R8 which I found.
Less than optimum.
Damn right it is, Tom. That's been in a nasty accident.
Hello there.
And although this car hasn't been marked as an insurance write-off, Car Vertical has still picked up on the fact that it's been involved in an accident which lesser checks wouldn't. So to know the true history of a car that you're looking to buy, a friend or family member's car, or even a car that you already own, make sure to use discount code Chris and the link in the description to save some money off your Car Vertical report.
Right. We have made the executive decision that we are not mechanics anymore. We've given up putting the anti-roll bar in. We're going to put it back together without it. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to affect the way we drive the car for now. We just need to get it mobile again. So, because we're working on a deadline, we need to get this car mobile today. And with doing that, it just seems like it's going to push us way back, which is not what we need. So for now, we're going to put it back together with a new battery in so it can actually start on its own. And then we've got some more stuff to do. But before we do that, there's something which I want to do with the wheels, because before these are driven on is the prime time to put a ceramic coating on these. I want to do this before the car's driven, so one, it's easier to do, and two, so it keeps them looking that fresh. So I've got some Revolvex wheel coating and some prep wipe as well. And ceramic coating wheels is super easy to do. All it is a quick spray down with a panel wipe just to make sure the surface is clean. Unless your wheels are filthy, then they'll need deep cleaning first. And the same on the faces. Now you guys keep asking me where I get all of my detailing stuff from. I know you guys value my opinion when it comes to detailing products, and I haven't changed my supplier. I've been using my car cleaning for years, and I'm still using them now, and they're also looking after you guys now as well. So there's going to be a discount code and a link in the description for you to go and grab some bits to clean your car. So anything you see me use, that's where I get it.
So now we can start on the front end, which means the first thing that needs to go in is that new battery so the car can actually start without a jump pack, which is much more convenient. And now to pop the front bumper in place. This again is super easy, it just locates into clips, and then there's loads of T30 bolts all over the top, the sides, everything, but that's all that holds it onto the car. But it's definitely easier when you don't have to do it twice because you forget to plug the wiring loom in for the parking sensors and everything first. Next we can pop in the kind of front boot tub, and that goes in just on a couple of locating pins and 2 bolts at the front, which now means that all of the panels are on the car.
That is some good progress made on the R8, and it may look at this point like it's nearly done. Unfortunately, it's not. And there's one thing which I've got to do to be able to show you why, which I really don't want to do. Yeah, I've got to wash it again. I'm going to keep it brief for you guys this time because even I'm fed up of doing this. As quickly as that, and luckily I've managed to do it just before the sun goes down, but hopefully now you can see why we're not finished yet, because this bodywork is covered in marks, chips and scratches too. It's hard to make it out because the car's still a little bit damp, but it definitely needs some more work. But it's the sort of work that you just can't do at home, so I need to pack my stuff and get out of here. R8 is now at the body shop, and we have had a fairly uneventful drive down here until I arrived. We've noticed she's obtained a little leak of the coolant system, so we're going to have to inspect what that is. But the easiest way to do that is getting the front bumper off, which we're going to have to do anyway because we're down here at Evolve Accident Repair Centre. Callum, who painted the Golf, painted the i30N, is going to paint the Audi. So I've spent all day putting this car back together to have to take it apart again. Let's go.
Which is unfortunate, but it's just part of the process. So front bumper is off again, but at least while I'm working on doing the strip down, Callum can get started on some of the prep work. So say for example on the lower doors and parts of the rear quarters there were signs of corrosion showing through, which is strange on aluminium, but it does happen.
Okay, now we've got the bumper off, we can inspect our leak, and I think I've found it just here. Drip. Do a drip. But it seems to be coming out of this joint here between the plastic edge and the metal core of the radiator, which is never good. And the thing that makes it worse is I've just had a look on the second-hand market, and luckily there is one for sale. Unluckily it's £1,000, so I'm gonna have to try and find a cheaper option to either get that repaired or to see if I can get one custom made for less than £1,000. It's got potential.
It's just one of those things. It's an old car now, it's about 15 years old, so these parts are going to start wearing out, so we just need to replace them as we're going. But anyway, now we can get back on with the prep, and all of us are cracking on with scotching up all of the panels around the back end of the car. And we need to remove any trims and also badges which are going to get in the way, like these ones. So the Audi badge can come off, and also the P8 badge can come off as well, and I'm not worried about keeping this one undamaged because I want to replace it, obviously. At this moment in time, it felt like we were making pretty good progress. I got to the body shop at around 5:30 and we got straight to work, and it went quite a lot quicker than we thought. But there was some slightly deeper repairs to do on the bonnet, so while Callum did that, I set about stripping down the front bumper of all of its grills and wiring and hoses, and he sanded the deeper dents and filled those. But it always surprises me how much additional damage there always is when you're painting a car that you didn't realise there was, so filling in all of those stone chips and all of those minor little imperfections is a must. But I'll leave that job to the professional while I pull off the rear bumper. I think is probably the best idea, because it would be a nightmare for me to mess it up and then the car gets painted and then it still looks rubbish, so we want to make sure all of the painted parts are going to be spot on. And like I said, there's always more than you think. All of the green marks that you can see here are probably stone chips, and then obviously the filler which he was then putting on is from the bigger dents, which you could see quite clearly. But because of the repairs, this car's going to need some primer.
Well, the time is now 9:30 on Friday the 8th of December. So the car is now pretty much scotched all over everywhere it needs to be scotched. We've sanded through the corrosion on the bottom of the doors, gone over the stone chips on the bonnet and the dent on there as well, if we can have a look at that. Looking much better. And down here, more corrosion at the bottom of the door that we've dealt with. And now we're going to put the car in the booth and get the areas primed which need to be primed, ready for the car to be painted tomorrow. I think we're smashing this car, don't you? He doesn't say much. Now we are on a tight deadline with this car because we have only got use of the booth over the weekend. After that, these guys are all going to go back to work and this car has got to be out of here. So we've got until Sunday to get this finished, which for painting a full car ain't that easy, but I think we got this. Primer time, baby! Woo! So we're just going to finish the masking off inside the booth and get some primer laid down.
And the reason we've got to do this is to cover over any kind of repaired sections. So at the bottom of the doors, the rear quarters and the bonnet have all got areas which have been repaired, which means they need to be primed before they can be painted. So we left this overnight to dry and came back in bright and early the next morning to get this car prepared, ready to get it back in the booth and remasked to be painted properly. But before it can go back in the booth, we've got to sand down the areas which we've primered to make sure that that's perfectly smooth, and also going to take the new paint properly and lay flat. So Callum does that whilst I start prepping the side skirt. And these were a bit tatty, but nothing that we couldn't sort out. One of them had a split, but Callum managed to sort that off camera. So once the primed areas have been sanded, we then laid down a guide coat on these. What that does is helps you be able to see if the areas that you've sanded are perfectly smooth or not once it's been sanded again. So if there's any dark patches here, you'll see that it's not quite smooth, but luckily this time around it was. So with the final clean down, we could get this car inside the booth and get it masked up.
Cold Septembers, the distances we covered, the fist fights on the beach, the busies round us up, do it all again next week, an embryonic love, the first time that it's scarred, embarrass yourself for someone, crying like a child, and the boy you kicked Tom's head in still bugs me now. That's the thing, it lingers and claws you when you're down.
And the R8 is now completely masked and ready for paint, so we can start laying down some colour. Obviously we've already panel wiped it to make sure everything's clean and free from oils and anything that could contaminate the paint job and make it look worse. So fingers crossed this one comes out well. So we've got one Audi R8 masked, sanded and ready to go. We've got our colour mixed up and inside the gun. And we've got one professional painter masked up and ready to go. Callum, it's over to you. Don't let me down.
And let me down he did not. But just quickly before I leave you to watch these clips, don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. On that final push now to get to that 100,000 subscribers before the end of the year.
I spent my teens in rage, spiraling in silence, and I armed myself with a grin, 'cause I was always the joker, buried in their humor, amongst the white noise and boys, round the room talking lines, drenched in cheap drink and snipe bags, a mirrored picture of my old man. Oh God, the kid's a damn hard, can't each other but he looks sad. Got the kill looks so sad. She said the dead. So I thought about shifting gear, and now she wept and wept and wept. Well, love came down on here. See my mother.
Right, the first coat of lacquer is now on. I've got to run off now, unfortunately, so I'm going to check back in tomorrow morning. Hopefully Cal can get some clips of painting the bumpers and stuff like that. Yeah, should be doable. And I'll see how this looks in the morning. It's now the next day and the R8 is painted. Now we have still got to flat and polish it, so there's going to be some dust nibs in there, but that is just part of the process. But while I was gone also, Callum spent the evening, maybe into the early hours of the morning, prepping and painting both of the bumpers and also the silver side blades too. So he was busy last night, safe to say, but I really appreciate his hard work. But now we can start reassembling this and flattening and polishing it at the same time. So we need to be out of here today. I need to get a move on.
So we're now on the final push to get this R8 back in its original form, so we can get the side skirts on and then start reassembling the front bumper by putting all of the grills in, the parking sensors and also the headlamp washers too. And once that front bumper's completely reassembled, we can then bolt that back up to the car. Now this is going to have to come back off again in the future to fix that water leak from the radiator, so I'm not too fussed about getting all of the trims and everything kind of finished off. We just want to see how it's going to look in its final form. But now that's done, I can refit the exhaust tips, which I spent some time polishing whilst they were off the car, and then also I can fit up the rear grills into that rear bumper before that goes on. Now this rear bumper has been made quite fiddly because someone in the past has converted the rear number plate lights to LED, which do look better, don't get me wrong, but they haven't done the best job of the wiring, so this might be another job which I tidy up in the future. Because it would be nice to have a little bit more cable there to make it easier to get the bumper on and off and fit the number plate lights without too much faff. But the rear bumper is now on, but there's one final piece on the sides which needs to complete it, which is those silver side intakes. So again, they go in on the push fittings, and then there's two bolts, one at the top and one at the bottom to bolt those onto the car. So whilst I was doing all this, Callum set about wet sanding and polishing the car. So he denibbed it and then went over it with 3000 to take out some of the texture and then polished it up nicely.
And finally, we've got the car back in one piece. We've done some of the wet sanding and polishing, not all of it, there's still some to do. But it is looking so much better. I need to get some new badges. There's quite a few other bits which need doing underneath the body of the car itself. So this project isn't finished yet. And also we've got that water leak which has sprung from the front radiator which needs sorting too. And by the way, I got a price for it, and second hand I think it's £1,000. So I need to try and find a cheaper alternative to get that fixed. But does it not look absolutely mega? It was well worth doing that. The car wasn't in bad shape, but every panel had a mark on it in some way, shape or form. And this car deserves to look the best it can, which I think now it does. But anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to hit subscribe while you're down there if you're not already. And I'll catch you next time, where hopefully the X3M's back if everything goes to plan. See you then.